are all prepared to have a lesson in biology. Remember, biology, the spice of life, you will need it for your existence, for your life, for the rest of your life. Please listen to this lesson as if you are preparing yourself not only for life, but definitely for your exam at the end of the term and at the end of the year. So we are going to look at chapter 29, and we are using our textbook that was done by Appel de Klerk. Inheritance, and specifically DNA and chromosomes. You will see we are going to do a lot of terminology today. It will be a good thing to make sure you know the definitions. So, my first assignment to you is complete this worksheet. Write down the title, draw the diagram, and see if you can get the labels. Please pause your video and complete it. If you then are ready to continue and reach the answers, you can continue to play. Okay, so I hope that you remember we always have a heading for a diagram. Remember, we use at least half an A4 page, or when they give you a block or a square, we fill it with our diagram, and our labels must also fit into that space. We draw in pencil. Labels and label lines are in, yes, you know that, in pen. We never cross our label lines, and we do it as neatly as possible. We cannot use cursive writing with a diagram. So we have the endoplasmic reticulum, the nucleolus, chromatin, nucleoplasm, nuclear pore, and the nuclear envelope. I want you now to see. Remember, we need to know and do revision. What is revision? To repeat. And that is how we study. So, I want you to copy these labels and then see if you can find the function. Yes, you will have to go to the start of your textbook to find these functions of all these parts. Pause the video and complete it first. Then you check, do you know them? Okay, so the nucleus has the function to control all the functions and activities of the cell. It passes on genetic information to new cells, and it is the site for transcription. And transcription is where the recipe of the proteins are being shared. We will come to that process in the next few lessons. The nucleolus is making the ribosome synthesis, and it contains the RNA, which is also a type of nucleic acid. RNA from the nucleolus. Then we have the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It transports a specific RNA, the messenger RNA, to the ribosomes. Ribosomes is the site where protein synthesis, the building of proteins, will take place. What is the chromatin? Chromatin is a long thread that is made up of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. So it's something else than RNA. RNA in the nucleolus. DNA is the building material of the chromatin, the long thread full of genetic material in the nucleus. The nuclear envelope contains pores, and that pores will be the outlet for the RNA to the ribosomes to make proteins. We have the nuclear envelope that makes the boundary of the nucleus, and we have the nuclear pores that we call the openings. So let's see, what is a chromosome? A long thread-like structure in the nucleus that carry the genetic material, and it is composed of DNA. So a chromosome is then that long chromatin network that will come shortened and making a short fat structure. And if you can look here, you can see it is actually rolled up very tightly to make a chromosome. Now, this is called a chromosome. But a chromosome actually consists out of two chromatids. This contains genetic material, this one contains genetic material, and it is then replicated so that the other chromatid has exactly the same genetic material. If I just can explain again, we have the chromatin network, a long thread-like structure that is lying in the nucleus. This is for the phase of the cell where the cell is doing its function. But when the cell wants to divide, the chromatin network will shorten and form short, fat chromosomes. A chromosome consists out of two chromatids, one chromatid and the other one, they are replications of exactly the same material, so that I actually have two parts with exactly the same genetic code on it. It is just kept together by the centromere. To know that these two, this one and this one, it contains exactly the same genetic material. So the definition of a chromosome, long thread-like structure in the nucleus, carry genetic material made of, composed of DNA. So if I can look at a chromosome, here is a real photograph. Most of the time, the chromosomes are too thin to be seen except with an electron microscope, when it is that long thread-like chromatin structure. But when the cell starts to divide, they will become shorter, fatter, and very tightly curled up. And strings that are exactly the same are kept together by the centrosome. So if we look at the nucleic acids, we know that the nucleic acids, DNA, is the one that makes up the chromosomes. It is the one that we find in the nucleus, nucleoplasm. But they call it nucleic acids. At first, they only thought it is only found in the nucleus. But later they found that this nucleic acids can be at other places also in the cell. So we have the DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and ribonucleic acid. And yes, Joshua, I know that you will ask me now, do I have to know these names? Yes, make sure. Quickly scribble the names down on your notepad so that you can remember them and can write them down. So if I look at the chromosomes and I can unravel a chromosome, I will see the following. I will see that it is actually tightly curled up and packed string. This string is curled around proteins. You know, if I do not want my thread or my wool to get all knotted up, I will use something to roll it on. So this histones are proteins that is used to roll this thread around so that it is not getting a big confusion. And then as we increase the size, we get to the DNA's structure. And what we can see is we see a spiral. It is in a spiral shape and it looks like a ladder. And we will look at the DNA and it will look like this. It is spiral shaped and it looks like a ladder. And for that we have a name, a double, because the ladder has two legs. It's a double helix. That is how we describe the shape of DNA, a double helix. If we now can look at the links between the backbone of the DNA, we see that these links are color coded and they are a specific molecule. A and T are linked. Let's say blue and yellow is A and T. There I see blue and yellow. So blue and yellow, A and T always link, and G and C always link. And that G, A, and T and C will make a specific code. And that specific code made up out of G's, A's, T's, and C's is a gene. And we know that genes carry a specific code to make a specific protein. So, on the DNA, there are specific sequences of the G, A, C's, and T's. This specific code I called a gene. And a gene will tell me the recipe for a specific protein in the body. So, if we have our chromosomes, there's something else about chromosomes that we need to know. I have my chromosome with one chromatid. Then, when the cell wants to divide, when it's time for the cell to divide, which is controlled by the nucleus, the chromosome will double. And I will now see two chromatids, and they will be linked together by a centromere. But in my cell, I have genetic material that came from my father, paternal chromosomes. But also, I have the same from my mother. And these two chromosomes will carry exactly the same traits. So with trait, I mean, if on this chromosome I have my recipe for my hair color, my strength of my muscles, and the shape of my ear. There I will have hair color, strength of muscle, shape of ear. There I will have hair color, strength of muscle, shape of ear. But what the codes that I got from my father. And that is, each one is called a gene. On this side, I also inherit from my mother hair color, but it is now doubled, muscle strength, and the shape of my ear. Yes, and when I have, when I have these two, they find each other and they will form a homologous pair. So, chromosomes from my mother and chromosomes from my father with the same human characteristics on each will come, they will search each other up, and they will form a homologous pair. So, each chromosome contains one very long molecule of DNA. The DNA molecule carries a code that instructs the cell about which kind of protein it should make. Each chromosome carries these instructions for making many different proteins. So a gene is, each chromosome is made up of a large number of genes coded for the formation of different proteins, which gives us our characteristics. A gene is responsible for a particular characteristic, and it is always on the same position on the chromosome. And that is how they now can find the gene that cause specific diseases or problems in the human body, because they know where the gene is to make the mucus inside your lungs. If that mucus is not made to a specific recipe and it's thick and sticky, you can suffer from a disease called cystic fibrosis. And that cystic fibrosis is due to a gene on the chromosome that do not know the proper recipe to make the good mucus that we need in our lungs. That's just to help you to understand. Here we have a plant example. The gene to tell us the color of the flower is on this chromosome. Okay, so this is one part of a chromosome. We know it is a chromatid, and this specific spot is for purple flowers, the recipe to make purple flowers. So because it is on this specific spot, we say the locus, the position, the locus for the gene to make purple flowers is here. Of course, this flower also inherits from his other parent a gene for the color of the flowers, but it has the gene for white flowers. Now I use the word allele. The allele for the flower color is on the one chromosome, purple flowers, exactly on that same locus. In the homologous pair, I will find the allele for the color of that flower from the other parent. And in this case, it is white. And I hope that you now want to know, okay, if this nucleus has an allele for purple flowers and for white flowers, what will be the color of the flowers? Just wait and see. We will reveal this in a next lesson. What I want you to know is to understand that on the same spot, on the same locus, I find the genes to tell me color of the flower, and I call those two genes the alleles for color of the flowers. What we also know is that if I only have half the number of the chromosomes, I have the haploid number. So if I have only one copy of the genetic material, I only have one copy, I do not have this chromosome's homologous partner. I have only one copy of the genetic material, as what we will find in the gametes. I have the haploid number and we use the symbol N. If I have two copies, so I have the homologous pair both from the mother and the father. I have two copies of genetic material, which I will find in all somatic cells with a nucleus. I have the homologous pairs. And now I have a diploid nucleus. So please, class, revise and know these definitions. It's from page 481 to page 487, I think, and I want you to make sure that you know all the definitions before we start with our next lesson, where we are going to discuss the structure of DNA and RNA. Thank you very much.